Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington did not get the assignment. I think he's, I don't know if he's still trying to get, I don't know what's going on. But, I think he decided to celebrate his sorrows away or what have you. But we're going to have to check on my buddy. But let me say this, kudos to Charles.
Yes,
I gave you a gift last night, but officially want to make sure we tell it to everybody. slowburnswaco.com as you get the cigar and the rest of the Jackson State University Tigers for winning the SWAC championship game.
Yeah, it's a surreal feeling. It's been a long time. I thought back, Dr. Cavil, to one of my first collegiate broadcasts with Mike Princeton Open Mic Network, and I'll never forget the opening kickoff, and we're playing in the old Walleye ISD Stadium, and the ball boomerang back behind the kickoff team, which was Jackson State, and Prairie View recovered. It was some rough Jackson State years, and to finally come full circle to get to that SWAC championship game against Prairie View. And you kind of think about all the things that have happened. Ashley Robinson coming from Prairie View to Jackson State, our observations about Jackson State football when he was at Prairie View. And it all kind of hit me yesterday. It was like, wow, this is all full circle against this tough Prairie View squad. It was tremendous atmosphere, tremendous game, and going to Atlanta, going to the Celebration Bowl. This is fun.
All right, that's enough of that. No, we'll do that the whole show. Tired of being a good sport. Now, with that being said, I really like the way you pinned that. I mean, in all seriousness, taking it back, and you made me remember that. And you're right. I did see you in there, and the look on your face about literally where Jackson State had fallen. Not so much in terms of that they were losing to Prairie View, but in terms of how they played. Yeah. And how, in some ways, it looked like you hate to say these kind of words, like they gave up. I don't even want to say quit, but like they gave up.
Yeah, the pride.
So to see, the pride that you wanted to play with. And to see that with the fan base and everything is the culmination of a great thing. So welcome to episode 215 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports from institutions, large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, to facilitate the story of the HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, Mike Washington is on assignment, or at least that's the story we're going to stick with, because he had a little too much fun, regardless of what took place. Yeah, it worked. It worked. We are filming from our home studio and sending a signal live on KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Mike and Joe Clay came on here and they told you that they love some Jackson, the city, in terms of the fun they can have there. The only thing I would say about Jackson, in a lot of ways, this is out of their control. It was so much going on that when you got to the airport, you couldn't even get an Uber, a Lyft. There was no thing. But it was cool because you literally had Prairie View and Jackson folks that were saying, hey, you need a ride? Because some people had rental cars, had people taking up, and they were taking you wherever you needed to go, to the hotels. Mm-hmm. So it worked out. The as we talk about what are we to each other, right? That said it all. The tailgate was dynamic. You had a lot of folks, Alan, from 1876 sports class were talking about. It was similar to what we see at Prairie before homecoming. And it was that. And they were literally walking around as you come in, mixing, sharing it. It happened to be December 4th, Founders Day, 115 years for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So I told you yesterday, but for everybody to know, for all the Alphas out there, happy belated Founders Day, including to you, Brother Bishop. So
Same to you.
Thank you. It was fantastic in terms of what that looks like. Let me go ahead and bring Drew in on this to see his thought, because I'm sure that he had a chance to check out a lot of things. But while you're doing that, let me ask you first, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, fellas. You know, a little bit under the weather, but we go get through this for today.
There you go. Can you pull up the picture with Charles and the trophy? I want to get that out there for
keep talking while I pull it up, Doc.
Yeah, I want everybody to see this picture because it just came up in my feed, and I was like, "What is it?" I said, "This brother holding a trophy. How you get the trophy?" I still want to know. Charles, tell us the backstory. How did you get to the trophy? I mean, everybody doesn't get the trophy. Even the players, take a picture around the trophy. Very few players get to actually hold the trophy. People don't realize this, but our very own Professor Charles Bishop actually is hosting the trophy long enough to be able to get a good picture.
That trophy turned into the Stanley Cup a little bit. Everybody got an opportunity to kind of get their hands on it and get some pictures. So it was a pretty cool experience. The trophy getting passed around last night. A lot of players, a lot of coaches, Neely and myself getting an opportunity to hold the trophy, to hoist the trophy. And, for a guy who's grown up immersed into this Black college sporting atmosphere, the sporting diaspora, as you put it, Jackson State football, Lord, to get an opportunity to hold that SWAC trophy, that meant a lot. I really enjoyed that. That was real personal for me.
No doubt about it. We ready for it?
Yeah, he got it up there.
Oh, my goodness. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, Charles, you're looking mighty slim there, too, man.
Hey, man, we get on this Peloton, man. We work on some things.
Let me shout out some folks. Diane Weber wants you to know, Boo. Somebody says the champs, as in THEE is here. Diane Weber said Boo. Michael Lee is in the house. Dr. Neal, some of us SU fans are putting up a barricade on I-10 corridor. I want for the coach, because they take care of you too when you come to Southern. So hopefully it's not for the fan base, so it might be for somebody else. So that should be interesting to see. Roderick Holmes, Dr. Holmes is in here. Mary Allen says good morning. Jamie Walker, good morning, good people. What an event and what a first three quarters. No doubt, yeah. And then it went south for the Prairie View fans out there. But great television in a lot of ways. In all seriousness, they represented 50,128 is the count, which means the game was recorded as the largest attended SWAC championship game, going back to the initial game in 1999, I believe, with Southern and Jackson. So kudos again for Jackson State and the Prairie View fans, because a lot of people question were very few fans going to come. Week notice, booked up the trips, got on the planes, put in probably around 12,000 people there. So I thought that was awesome to see. But certainly kudos to also the other fans. I seen a lot of people from other schools, FAMU, Grambling. I saw representation, Valley, shirts on, Alcorn. They were all in the house. Southern, Alabama A&M, and Alabama State. Bethune-Cookman, I even saw a shirt around there with that information on. So I want to shout out to all those folks, including Texas Southern University. So I thought that was real cool to see there. Anything before we move forward and get into obviously scores a little bit and then talking about the game as we go a little further in that. Any additional thoughts that you wanted to provide in terms of the game there?
Yeah, I thought one of the more poignant moments of the night was talking to Keontae Hampton, and he was just at a loss for words. He's had seen some rough Jackson State years. This was his senior year and for the SWAC championship game, for him to get a ring, that meant a lot to him. So, it was guys like that, guys that stuck around, who fought through whatever adversity with Jackson State football prior to Coach Prime coming, went through the spring, and here they are here in the fall, and now they have a SWAC championship ring. And Coach Prime, he said, I know what's coming. After he talked about the spring, I know the type of team that I'm attempting to build, and for it to culminate in a SWAC championship and have an opportunity to play for the Celebration Bowl, that was huge. And a young man like that, great, tremendous linebacker, been SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. But for him to have an opportunity to get a SWAC ring, that was a special moment for him as well.
Yeah, so the two HBC games you got on yesterday, obviously a lot of us were talking about the SWAC championship game. It happened to be on ESPN2, and this was championship week, so you looked at that. You also had the Division II playoffs with Bowies State making it to the third round, playing the number one team that won the championship a couple of years ago, Valdosta State, the Blazers. They couldn't quite get it done, 41-17, but kudos to the Bulldogs on a great season. To make it this far furthest than they ever have made it in terms of that. Good representation of CIAA football is certainly back in that conference. Looks like the SIAC, as they've gotten back in the football season too, business as Albany State had a significant season, Savannah State, but it looks like there's going to be some changes at the head, Savannah State. So it'll be interesting to see what that program looks like moving forward. But let me go to you, AD. Talk a little bit about the Bulldogs.
Well, first of all, let's give shout out to Bowie State for making it. That's the furthest, I believe, a team has made it since Tuskegee made it there in, I believe, 2014, 2015. And then, of course, Winston-Salem prior to that, making it all the way to the championship game. So, we do football well at both at the Division II level and at the FCS level. One thing that was noted about the game, I have not had a chance to actually go back and watch the game, was from the articles I've read, they gave big props to the Bowie State defense for their performance against Valdosta State, one of the top offensive teams in the Division II level. So Coach Wilson over there doing a few things, and I don't want to put it out there this fast, but you always have to wonder, with about a dozen jobs open throughout HBCU football, where is Coach Wilson's name on the list? He should be on the list somewhere. Now, whether he wants to go or something, that's a totally different story. But Coach David Wilson and his staff, his coordinators, should be on some of these lists for some of these openings that are out there in HBCU football and football in general.
I like the way you think. I agree wholeheartedly with that. A couple of other coaches we've had on recently was Wilson on here. We've had T.C. Taylor, offensive coordinator, the run he's making. Will his name jump out there a little more? A couple of other coaches as well. Be interesting to see. Mac's name's been out there, Coach Mac, formerly of North Carolina Central, now Tennessee. One of the hiring places at Alabama State has made the move, so you have two spots, a couple of more Division II spots open as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what takes place as we move forward. Let's get into this break, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the SWAC championship game as we move forward. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your family.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports
Tell everybody they can follow their dreams.
He know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Charles Bishop and Neely, they follow Jackson State football and having dinner with them. I mean, they said this team feels like nobody can score 3 times on them. 3 times. He didn't say if it was 3 field goals.
Go ahead, Doc.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike is on assignment, but we have none other than Professor Bishop and Professor Drew, visiting professor, as you know, coming in. BJ Jones is on the road. Shout out to Jamie Walker, BJ Jones. They were in the house doing it. Shout out to Neely, as he's put in a lot of work over this year. Congratulations to Neely. Got a chance to partake with festivities afterwards. He is certainly a man of high quality in terms of the way he handled himself after the championship and really breaking down some things. Good sportsmanship all the way. Kudos to him in terms of what he brings to the table. It's going to be fascinating getting in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. We're going to bring you a lot of insight. So make sure that you stick with us, because while the season is running down, it's not over. It's going to be interesting. I put up there that we moved to 10 o'clock today because we're on the road moving around, just got back in time. But I said congratulations to Charles and the rest of Jackson State Tigers in terms of the win. At this point, you got an A. But as you know, final exams are around the corner.
Got to finish.
Graduate in 2021. You must, as Diane would say earlier in her remarks, that Prairie View didn't understand the assignment. I think she's correct at this point. But I want to make sure you tell Jackson State they must finish the assignment if they want this A+. You're sitting at an A. Great season. Everything's on the line. Finish the deal so you can get this A+ and put a stamp on the season.
And I will say this, Coach Prime drove that statement home, that it's not over. You know, there's one more big game out there for Jackson State. And you know, nobody remembers second place. So he made that point to say that you got to finish it. You got to finish it. So Celebration Bowl is going to be a fun and exciting time for Jackson State fans and Jackson State fan base. Jackson State team, but like Diane said, understand the assignment. The assignment is go ahead and get the celebration win for Jackson State for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting game. Going to be a great game. Tough South Carolina State Bulldog football team, prideful football team. They have tradition and history as well. So it's going to be a great game.
Before we get too far in front of us, let's go back to this matchup. Had the stats so I can break it down a little bit. And people watch the game, you may have seen something else. But it started out, Prairie View gets on the board first, goes up 7-0. Jackson State comes back, ties it up. So at the end of the first quarter, 7-7. Very good game in terms of the competitiveness. Neither team could really run the ball that much in terms of what they were doing. Total offense was 91 for Prairie View. Jackson State was 72. Passing was 72. One on that trick play on 4th and 2 really caught Jackson State. But as you talked about earlier, and we will get a chance to maybe see that, that's not a problem with Jackson State. They will give up a score, but they seem to get better and tougher throughout the game. We saw a lot of that in this game. I think there were a couple of chances that that could have put the game differently if you have Juwan Pass connect on that. But one of the things I said going in this, you said also was about the need to stop the run, which makes Juwan Pass better. And essentially, Prairie View could not run the ball. Jackson State get a little better. They couldn't run the ball much either in terms of both defenses really setting the tempo of this game. And then finally, in the second half, you talked about those big plays, the interception for a touchdown, the kickoff return, obviously special teams, a punt that was shanked, for lack of better words, set up a score. So a lot going on in terms of what's taking place there. So did want to talk about that a little bit. What did you think about, let's go in terms of that first quarter. Anything stood out to you in that part of the game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a typical slow start for the Jackson State offense in that first quarter. And it has looked kind of that way all season. This team, I kind of describe them as like a middleweight boxer. You know, they feel you out for the first 3-4 rounds, and then they flurry in the middle rounds, flurry at the end, and you look up and they won the boxing match. But that has been who they've been all season. For whatever reason, as much talent as they have, there has only been one game that comes to mind where they came out the gates hot, and that was Alabama A&M. But normally, you know, it almost takes, and I've said it all season, for them to be hit in the mouth first before they come back really punching. And that was, you know, kind of case in point yesterday. They got hit in the mouth first by Prairie View. Awesome play design on the 4th and 2, a little trickery. Eye discipline wasn't there, and they got caught off guard. But, you know, as soon as you got that, Jackson State got right back in position and scored, you know, and that's been one of the themes. Coach Prime will say it all the time: win the quarter. So that quarter was a draw. So I think, you know, that was helpful, at least, that you just seen no panic from the Jackson State team all season. Whether, you know, they get down or whatever is not working for them that they had, you know, contemplated going into the game, they just keep pounding rock, and eventually something comes forward.
Other than maybe that first game against FAMU, and Drew probably remembers that, do you recall another game in the season where you didn't necessarily see the offense get as engaged as they tend to do maybe later in the game, with the special teams and the defense in a lot of ways really playing this out? Even the second score was a short field in terms of the defense putting him in that position to get that. So offensively, you didn't see a lot of production overall for Jackson State University, and this is not disparaged, because you need all three phases, and whatever works to win a game,
right,
what goes
right.
down. But I'm just talking about moving forward and to give people a bigger picture of the season as you followed it to that level. Did you see any other game? Again, maybe obviously the FAMU game probably resonates with me, but am I missing one there?
FAMU definitely was a tough slugfest, if you will, from a defensive standpoint. Offense just really couldn't get on track like they wanted to. Delta State was, I thought, another game where it was kind of difficult. You know, the offense came along in fits and spurts. Same thing with the Southern.
Really comes to mind where it was fits and spurts for the offense, and eventually they got it done. And like I said, it's almost as though, you know, it's like watching a boxing match. The first few rounds, it's just you're trying to figure out what it is they're doing, and then you get a few punches in there in the middle rounds, and then you flurry late. And that's kind of just been kind of the story of the season.
Fascinating when you think about it like that, of how dominating this defense is. Before I go to you, Drew, I did want to follow up Charles. In terms of totality, you have a good recollection of the pantheon of Jackson State, Sports SWAC, but specifically Jackson State. Where does this defense fit? I mean, obviously, in some ways, since you have that last game on the season now, they need to finish the deal, if you would, in terms of putting a total resume for a season together. But where would you go in the direction to give some people some thought process of where this team is, particularly what they've been able to do on the defensive side of the ball?
I lost your audio for a second there, Dr. Cavil. Could you repeat that question for me again?
Yeah, sorry about that. Essentially what I was saying is, you know, when you talk about Jackson State, the pantheon of where they are, particularly from a defensive perspective, where does this team fit? Obviously, you talk about them needing to finish it.
Yeah.
To put the total resume of this season together. Previous years, you didn't necessarily have a celebration bowl out there that you could put on there. Obviously, you had this part where you had the Heritage Bowl, but at that time, in a lot of ways, Jackson State was going to the playoffs, and or Southern was a roadblock there. It didn't quite match up there. But even going further back than that, where do you put this defense, Jackson State University?
And I have to give Neil credit. This is something that he brought to my attention in terms of taking a look at this defense. We're taking a look at one of the greatest Jackson State defenses of all time. And especially when you start taking a look at it from the perspective of some of these pass-happy offenses playing in this era now where there's, you're playing in space a lot more. One of the defenses that comes to mind is Jackson State's 1987 defense. That is a defense that featured future pros. And you had the linebackers of Cammy Collins, Dennis Conner, Darian Conner, Andre Lloyd, some of the greatest linebackers in Jackson State history. The 1996 defense as well. But you're talking about a Jackson State defense that's only given up 13 points per game. And then the ability that they have to really make you one-dimensional is something that I've talked about quite often. They really go out of their way to stop the run, and then they're able to pin their ears back. And they just have one of the best edge rushers, I think, in the nation, James Houston, in that he could take over games. He is really an issue trying to, he becomes unblockable at times, and then he's just a playmaker. And we saw it again yesterday, tremendously athletic play to bat the ball down and catch it in the end zone. And again, he just looks at it from a standpoint.
He caught that ball before it went low. He was he
right
one-handed and pushed it to the other hand. Kept his feet. I mean, it was amazing.
It was amazing, phenomenal to watch. But and just he being in on running plays as well. Aubrey Miller is over 100 tackles, I believe, on the season as well. But this defense, their speed in terms of getting to the ball, and it's just been one of the themes all season with this defense, 11 hats to the ball. And you really got an opportunity to see that up close again yesterday. They really fly around in terms of making plays, trying to stop the run, and then making you one-dimensional. And then they can really come after the quarterback.
Yeah, Jamie Walker jumps in here and says that front seven is phenomenal. In that vein, Drew, I want to ask you a question, not necessarily in terms of Jackson State, but in this day and age, with offenses being so prolific, the game being played in such a way that it's opened up. What are your thoughts in terms of the league going forward? Obviously, FAMU solid on the defensive side, a lot of depth in terms of their front seven. Prairie View has showed you that they could be in that equation in terms of what they've done defensively for a large part of the year, particularly in this game. Do you see recruiting-wise, you talk about copycat, do you think more of the SWAC schools are going to go in that? Obviously, Valley in a lot of ways had a very prolific defense front seven. People talked about their toughness, and then we found out that they lead in the back end interceptions. So they might have, in the totality of a defense, may have been a strong contender for what that looks like in a lot of ways, just so we're able to do it on offense. But my big framework moving forward, what do you think this means for the SWAC in terms of the defensive side of the ball?
That was me?
Yes, go ahead, Drew.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was playing with the computer. You've seen what Willie Simmons is out there doing as far as the recruiting goes. He's already put it out there. He is trying to get some of the top athletes, not only from the portal, but also from high school. They've got a couple of commits. I saw one about a 3 or 4 star from down in Clearwater, Florida, offensive lineman. And I think it's the attention that the SWAC is getting, especially after this weekend with Coach Prime. I mean, it's really going to change.
This game was flexed from ESPNU to ESPN2. Go ahead.
Exactly. And I'll talk about this after we come out of our break, but I've actually got the live attendance numbers from not only the Power 5 games, but the Group of 5 games right here in front of them. And let's talk about those after we get back from the break. And I'm just waiting on the TV ratings to come out. My point is, you don't have to be at Georgia, Alabama, Texas to be seen. And what it looks like that's happening is a lot of these African-American athletes who are at some of these FCS schools in the middle of nowhere are being targeted to come back to HBCUs. I mean, if you go to a school in the middle of nowhere, you might as well go to a valley in the middle of nowhere and get you some culture. Or an Alcord, if you're going to go to a rural school and get you some culture. If you want to go to a school in an inner city area and get your education, culture, and play some ball, you can go to a Jackson. You can go to a Prairie View. You can go to a FAMU. So depending on what type of setting you want, you can get it. And when you think about what happened to FAMU when we went to Southeast Louisiana, those Black athletes who play for Southeast Louisiana have to really open their eyes. Like, is this the type of culture that we want to play for? You know, we good as long as we y'all, boy, brother, N-word, whatever we want to say. But when the other ones come in who look like me or for the opposition, now you want to call them those things. But you're talking about the same people who I break bread with on a daily basis. So a lot of eyes are starting to open. They're coming back. And with the recruiting and everything else that's going on and the exposure that we're getting, they're just exposed at a Kennesaw State as they am at a Jackson State. Just exposed at a Valdosta State as they are at a Bowie State. So I'll leave it right there.
Great points made there. When we come back, we might, in that fourth quarter, we'll get into a little bit of recruiting to see what we're hearing on the recruiting side, because I'm hearing from a lot of institutions, as you said, HBCU-wise, the recruiting is going pretty well. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens December. Remember, that's that early recruiting period. And then obviously you have February, the big day. With that being said, this is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into halftime. We'll be right back after the second break. We might have a little something for you to check out as we come back, because Charles Bishop is famous. He getting a little shout out. Him and Negan. That's pretty nice when you know people of that caliber, I'll say. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
It's the show where we take you inside the game before the game begins. It's the pregame. With your host, Charles Bishop and Neely. So get ready, because we pregame harder than the other show's party. It's the pregame.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. We're never not working. Number 15?
That's my rub.
Ooh, nice.
Never not working.
Never, ever, never, ever not working.
Welcome everybody to Juneau, Alaska.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders scalp shield technology.
True Black Essentials is a retail opportunity to bring Black businesses under one roof, where every product on every shelf in every aisle will be Black owned and Black produced by people all over the world. Statistics show that the $1.3 trillion of spending power that we have as Black people can easily be turned into each Black person having $2 million if we were to shop Black for 2 years. So True Black Essentials will launch an e-commerce store on November 1st, 2020. But we will open up brick and mortar stores in Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston, and Jacksonville, with the very first store opening in Atlanta, June 19, 2021.
Your ad could be ran here. myjbn.com/support. myjbn.com/support for more information.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab, looking into the second half of the show. Let's get into it. We talked about the matchup. Any last words that you wanted to add into that, Charles, in terms of the matchup? Or is it time to turn to the Celebration Bowl? Is it time to make that pivot?
You know what? You give yourself 24 hours, so I'm ready to go ahead and make that pivot. It was tremendous SWAC championship game.
Got to 24 hours then.
I know. I'm a basket a little while longer now. I say you give yourself 24 hours.
So. You run with the trophy and all. Do you get a little mini replica? Are you gonna put that on the shelf back there?
Oh, you know I am. I got to. I got to. Yeah, that has to go back there.
I'm done with you. I will
gotta
say
make a
this,
poster of it.
Dr. Holmes says PV didn't seem well prepared. Did PV peak as a team at the Southern game? I think some people had that analysis. I don't think that was the case. I think, first of all, we need to be careful and give kudos to Jackson State University. Jackson State has a championship, and now you can sign on it, a championship defense. It was very good defense. Now it's a championship defense. Championship defense make you do things that you don't particularly like to do. I would like to say the way I looked at the game and broke it down, looking at stats and a couple of plays, I thought in terms of offensive play calling, the Coach Dooley called a really good game. There were two passes, and not to beat on Jawan pass. He's a college student, so college student. He's not pro, so he's not. Even pro players have times when they don't make these passes and throws. He missed two receivers that were open and probably would have been able to get into the touchdown. It would have been a different game, but ifs and flips, all that wasn't the case. The same thing with the interception. Great play, as we talked about the quality, but if you're able to put maybe a little more arc on it, the play was there in terms of the running back had some space out there to open up with green grass. So there's two teams fighting. So it's not always about one team not being prepared. It's the fact that one team is pushing against the other team. And you could talk about one side of the ball. When you talk about Prairie View defense came to play. They shut down a very explosive offense. So when I shut down, I'm saying at least for 3 quarters. And some people say if you look at their overall average for the game. But there are multiple ways that you can win a game. You can win a game with special teams, i.e., that's what happened. You can win a game with defense, i.e., that's what happened. It doesn't mean that you're not prepared. So I saw it a little differently, but I certainly see what you're talking about there. I just think that you had a young man that didn't have a game, and part of that could have been just the normalcy and the magnitude of being on in a championship setting. You've seen that with 7 or 8 other championship settings that took place. With that, let's go in that, Drew, talking about the attendance, 50,000. Or did you want it to sound like you might want to jump in on it, Charles, before we go into the attendance part? Did you want to say something, Charles?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I take a look at it, and looking at your stat sheet, I have to give kudos to the Purview's defensive staff. Shagur Sanders, 8 of 16, only 85 yards. That's just something that we haven't seen all season. At a minimum, he's throwing for over 200 yards. So you take your hat off. It was a well-played game. I thought what tipped the game in the balance, I think, were the other elements. Like you said, there's a championship-level defense. James Houston makes his play in the end zone, a tremendously athletic play. And then I talked about special teams. Like, I was hoping that Zay Bolden would get an opportunity to field the kickoff. And sure enough, he did what he does. Same thing with Warren Newman. Warren Newman had some big momentum type plays, that got the fans involved, in terms of a punt return. So I was, fairly surprised that Prairie View kind of kicked to them, because I think I said it, Southern schematically, I thought did the best to control that element of Jackson State's team in not kicking to Zay Bolden in terms of pooch kicking and kicking away from Warren Newman.
I think in some ways to that, Charles, you're limited in terms of what your team can do and better based on their skill set. So you already seen that the team had some trouble in terms of special teams, the short punt. So I'm not sure if you can really ask that punter or kicker to make those type of kicks if that's not really what they're able to do well. So sometimes you just got to stick what you can do and hope you can schematically put other folks in positions. And sometimes that's just not the way it is meant to be. And that means that you got to find other ways to win the game, like Jackson State did. With that, Drew, we started talking about the numbers, attendance-wise, versus other teams. Could you provide us some information? I know you had the Power Fives, the G5s. Where did ultimately the SWAC championship game stack up in terms of that? 50,128. Man, that's a statement.
Yeah. Actually, it was number 6 overall. When you it finished ahead of all the group of fives and just behind the Power Fives. So put that into perspective for all those out there who are screaming playoffs, playoffs, playoffs. Nowhere in FCS playoffs will there be 50,000 fans for a game. So quickly going through the attendance.
Okay, Drew. Put the
SEC championship game, 78-030. Big Ten championship game, 67-183.
I think both
Big
of those were
12
records too.
Championship game, 65-771. ACC championship game, 57-856. Pac-12 championship game, 56-511. SWAC championship game, 50-128. Top group of 5 team, Conference USA, 41-148. AAC with the Cincinnati, who's going to wind up in the playoffs, 37-978. And think about that one. Cincinnati was at home also, just like Jackson State was at home. Rounded out, Sunbelt 31-014, the Mountain West 13-445, and the MAC 10-317.
Those were the last two. I think were weekday games though. Were they? No, they were Friday. So still.
Well, you had championships games started Wednesday. Doc, depending on the conference.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the only thing I really want to see when it comes to the TV numbers is the fact that the SWAC championship game was on at the same time as the SEC championship game. And yes, we know they were on two different network carriers. As the SEC championship game was on CBS and the SWAC championship game was on ESPN. But they actually have the same footprint, the SEC and the SWAC. So I want to see how those may have possibly affected the TV numbers, where if those two did not go head to head as far as time slots, I think the SWAC championship game may have even done better TV numbers if it was not competing against the SEC. Because I know a lot of people in this area were debating, do I watch Alabama, Georgia, or do I watch Jackson State, Prairie View if you're a HBCU football fan?
Yeah, great point. Charles, overall attendance first and then viewerships, what that may mean, or what are your thoughts in terms of what they look like?
Yeah, I mean, they were going head to head against the SEC in terms of that time slot. So I'm sure that there'll be some questions in terms of how the numbers will look from a television perspective. But attendance-wise, it looked tremendous. The highlights that I've seen thus far in terms of Jackson State's fans really coming out and supporting Jackson State football, supporting the SWAC championship. And kudos to Prairie View. A lot of fans made the trip over to Jackson this weekend that contributed to that 50,128. So, Jackson State is going to have that strong 35, 40,000, but kudos to Prairie View. They brought 10 themselves.
Let's take this quick break, and then we'll get your thought in there, Drew, if we come back with our last quarter. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Stick with us. We'll be right back as we get into the fourth quarter. Put it up there. Let's 4.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
I want you to get the vaccine because I want you to be safe.
I don't want you to be a patient I take care of in the hospital. That's what I'm scared of. I hug you.
Yeah. Love you. Love you too.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. We're never not working. Number 15?
That's my rub.
Ooh, nice.
Never not working.
Never, ever, never, ever not working.
Welcome everybody to Juneau, Alaska.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders scalp shield technology.
Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as I'm.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watkins and Charles Bishop. Mike is on assignment or probably still partying in Jackson, Mississippi. Literally though. Jackson, people may say whatever they want. I got up at 4 o'clock to make sure I could catch the flight. So I'm outside about 4:30. And you come out and you hear this music and you realize there's some people still in the club. That's like, I'm wondering, now I'm wondering, was that Mike?
Oh, wow.
In that club with everybody else. I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe he actually on a different assignment, but I'm just saying. Eddie Drew, I know you had some thoughts that you wanted to share as we were coming back from the break.
Yeah, getting back into this numbers game that we're talking about. HBCU fans, you got one last opportunity to influence the marketers out there with the Celebration Bowl, both in attendance and viewership. And I challenge our people to make this the biggest game outside the New Year's Six and the playoffs.
I like it.
It has happened in the past. You know, we've been around low 30s as far as attendance at the Celebration Bowl. It's when you consider the distance from South Carolina State to Atlanta, and then the rabid fan base that Jackson State has. I think we're going to be well over 40 in Atlanta for the Celebration Bowl in live attendance. Plus, let's see how many eyeballs are watching not on the streaming platform, but on the free linear TV, as that game will be on linear TV.
ABC. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of attendance? Jackson folks gonna show up? Are they ready to double dip?
Not only are Jackson folks ready to show up, but Jackson has a huge fan base in Atlanta. So I'm really looking forward to the Atlanta fan base to really show up in droves. Atlanta has always been a tremendous feeder to Jackson State. I can say that because my cousin has been over that Atlanta chapter of Jackson State. So that's always been a point of pride there in terms of that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know Jackson State is going to turn up and turn out over there in Atlanta. Looking forward to it because that's almost one of those places that whenever we show up in Atlanta, we saw it, especially with the SWAC MEAC Challenge a couple of years ago.
I was just going to say
when they played Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, wasn't that one of the largest, if not largest, MEAC SWAC Challenge games?
It was one of the largest, if not the largest. I think it was the largest. In terms of setting an attendance record for the MEAC SWAC Challenge there.
So that's what it was. They set an attendance record at that time. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, we Jackson State fans, they love their Jackson State football, and now they have a championship team. They have a SWAC championship team. So definitely looking forward to setting a Celebration Bowl attendance record.
And then South Carolina State, my understanding, they pretty much have sold out their block of tickets. You know, obviously they started early in terms of what was given on campus. And I'm sure they're already starting to buy out the other allotment of tickets. They get to start a little early, but so I believe South Carolina State, in terms of how they're hungry to get in this game, I think it's going to be unique from the standpoint that you have two different teams that haven't been there before in terms of the matchup. You had that once before with Grambling and North Carolina Central, but outside of that, it's been Grambling because they had repeated in that time, and then you had the A&T run, obviously. Most times, and then the Alcorn. So it's going to be unique from that perspective that you have different energy, different teams coming in. So that should be fascinating to see what that looks like. But thus far, I'm hearing good news in terms of what I'm hearing out of South Carolina State. As you said, AB, they're a short distance away. So you got to imagine, my understanding, they have a pretty good rabid cultural fan base in Atlanta as well. Seems like most HBCUs doing that part. Just one of the major metropolitan cities.
Atlanta, Dallas,
and Houston. Yeah, you're right.
Chicago.
No doubt about it. LA, to some degree, you have those areas, major metropolitan areas, where you have a good fan deep group of alumni for various HBCUs, financially doing well. Southern, obviously, throw them out there in terms of that, in terms of what they get done in those areas as well. So, with that being said, let's get into the next part of this. Drew, what are some common opponents? I think I recall a couple of them, but I wanted to see you get in there and correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe you can give some updates, scores, whatever. You had that Alabama A&M game between South Carolina State, Alabama A&M, played both of them in Jackson. South Carolina State also played Florida A&M.
FAMU, Bethune, and Alabama
A&M. They played Bethune-Cookman too as well, right?
Yeah.
So at least three common opponents between South Carolina State that has played both them and Jackson State. Do you have any of the scores on those matchups?
Yeah, yes, I do. And let's give kudos to South Carolina State for trying to maintain the integrity of a HBCU football schedule with the with the BAC only having 5 HBCU opponents. They went out and intentionally scheduled other HBCUs to maintain that culture.
Great point.
South Carolina State played,
and they played, to your point, they played their old rivals. They played tough matchups, obviously with Alabama A&M, top 5 team, third best in the East, and you may argue, depending on how South Carolina State ends the thing, that you could arguably have the top 3 teams in most people's top 5, top 10 rankings could come right there out of the East Division.
Wow.
Hey,
who would have thought that a year ago?
Well, I think you tried to stick that in on some of us. I don't know if you had it quite like that, but you said don't be surprised that the East is going to be deep. And as we have alluded to, because I'm going to be fascinated about data points of keeping up with this every year. The overall record with the East over the West, in terms of what that looks like, is fascinating. And then you talk about what the East did, again, non-conference facing South Carolina State. Whew, boy, I tell you, fascinating. Yeah. Go ahead, Drew.
The one non-SWAC opponent that they played that was HBCU was A&T. Just wanted to throw that out there. But the three SWAC opponents that they did play. Week 1, Jackson State defeated Florida A&M 7-6. Week 5, South Carolina State lost to Florida A&M 30-7. Week 7, Jackson State defeated Bethune-Cookman 42-12. Week 4, South Carolina State lost to Bethune-Cookman. South Carolina State defeated Bethune-Cookman 42-35. And Alabama A&M, the big one. Jackson State defeated them 61-15 in week 5. South Carolina State lost a nail biter to them week 1, 41-42. So if you look in just time-wise of opponents, the one opponent that they played that was in the same time frame where you could say that team was possibly peaking or not peaking was Bethune-Cookman, week 4 and week 7 respectively. So that would be the one to look at first before you look at basically they flip-flop FAMU and Alabama A&M week 1 and week 5 between the two as far as the schedules go.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Going back to you, Charles, just your thoughts in terms of common opponents. Most people are going to come in here in this game. I know this is not the way that you would want to paint it in terms of being objective and just the way that you go about the business on that side. Certainly, I'm sure it's not the way the coaches are going to do it, but let's be truthful with this. A lot of folks are going to believe that Jackson State should win this going away. You can't worry about the fan base. They're going to do what they say. They'll do that. But how does the coaching staff in your frame, what you've seen all season, I know they're going to talk about it, but what have you heard them say in particular that you can share with us in terms of how they go about that is more important to me?
Well, as you well know, T.C. Taylor, he was a former offense coordinator at North Carolina Central. And the first thing—
to go back. Congratulations to T.C. Taylor.
Yeah, and the first thing he will tell you about the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, those lines are different. Offensive lines and defensive lines are different. From a SWAC perspective, I don't know where they're getting them from, but the physicality is something that jumps out at you when you take a look at these SWAC MEAC matchups. You take a look at North Carolina A&T and Alcorn. It was always the line play that really kind of jumped out at you with regards to the MEAC being what I would think was the more dominant, more physical offensive or defensive line. Same thing that you really kind of take a look at with that Grambling North Carolina Central matchup. I thought it was the Grambling defensive line that year. And as we remember, those guys, Christian Anthony and all those guys, they were a dominant bunch. So I always, take a look at with reverence at the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference with regard to that line play. Those guys are physical on both sides of the line.
Yeah, I agree with that in terms of that. Last comments you want to make in terms of that, Drew, in terms of the physicality that you've noticed one way or other over the years in terms of MEAC SWAC, particularly in the MEAC SWAC Challenge or the Celebration Bowl? Do you see that in the same framework as Charles did?
But this is the opportunity for the SWAC to get off the proverbial schneid as it always seems like the SWAC has the team that everyone is talking about coming into the MEAC SWAC Challenge and or the Celebration Bowl. But the MEAC walks away with the victory every time. Is it because traditionally the MEAC is more physical? Yeah, the SWAC has the skill players. The SWAC has the stars, the glamour, the glitz. But it seems like the MEAC has the grunts, the hard workers, the ones who go in there and do the job that no one else wants to do. Also, kicking game. Seems like the MEAC teams traditionally have better special teams in kicking game. Be that the punter, be that the kicker, be that the coverage teams. Those are the things that the SWAC teams in general have given up and lost some of these games because of those things, special teams and line play. It's going to be interesting.
We saw that yesterday. Great point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if South Carolina State can carry that mantle for the MEAC and continue that domination of the SWAC when these two conferences come up against each other. Who gave Central a chance back in August? No one.
I was just going to bring that one
gave
up.
Central a chance back in August.
That's right.
And what did they do to Alcorn?
They pulled it upset.
Give South Carolina State a chance against Jackson State. Can Jackson State answer the challenge? We'll say that for another show on another day.
Yeah, we're gonna get plenty of time to get in it. We got 2 weeks. We'll get in a little bit this week, but we'll go a little more in terms of the basketball round ball review. See if we can get on that a little bit as we have a week, and then we'll pick up and peak things off. We'll be in Atlanta. We'll be there live. So Thursday, most likely we'll do a show live from Atlanta. Friday, we'll have the Radio Road. So we'll do something special for you Friday. And then we'll turn over and let the game do its thing on Saturday. And we'll come back and you'll see us on Sunday talking about a close of the season. Somebody will come out with a Celebration Bowl champion. I will say this about the Uniques Jackson State. It's obviously this is a different type of defensive front. Maybe the best defensive front that you've seen from a SWAC team since Grambling State with Princeton, Anthony, and those individuals. I would argue this team up front may be a little tougher than that team there. So it'll be fascinating to see that clash. South Carolina State's offensive line versus the defensive line of Jackson State. I would also say this. I believe that you may have finally seen the maturation of the SWAC to catch up with that physical play in terms of what we've seen this year from a defensive side of the ball. And it may be even that the Eastern Division, if you would, that obviously has two of the incumbents coming over directly from the MEAC, that may be even ahead of the West in terms of the physicality of the defensive front. So I'm interested in that matchup, that defensive line for Jackson State and the offensive line of South Carolina State. We've seen it play out a little earlier in terms of, obviously, it's the first game of the year, so you can talk about that. But that's South Carolina State and Alabama A&M, where you matched up offense with galore. You've seen it differently with FAMU. You've seen them get it done against Bethune-Cookman. So I'm fascinated in that part of that. But that'll do it for us today. Appreciate the lab listeners and the time. Get in there. Say it again. Congratulations to Jackson State University Tigers 2021 SWAC championship game winners. I see Charles kind of chucking me up. I bring it out there. He smiles big, and that's what gave me pause. I was like, man, you can't get over it. Again, shout out to you in terms of the cigar as we talk about that slow burn, waco.com. We'll make sure that you get your packet to you so you'll have your cigars in time for the Celebration Bowl in case you need them again as well. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. We'll see if we can go find Mike and make sure that he makes it back to Houston safely. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Shout out to AD Drew, Brian, and AD of Sports Wrap. They'll be on tonight to give you some different insights. DJ Jones most likely will be up on the BCSN. So download my JVN, my BCSN to get that done. And so, again, shout out to all those that support us. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, as Facebook, and YouTube, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Drew?
Lecture.
Dismiss.